All right, let's talk about one of the biggest head scratchers on the map, Greenland. You hear the name, you picture, well, green stuff, right? Rolling hills, maybe some fields. But the reality, it's a massive frozen wilderness. So, how on earth did a land of ice get a name like Greenland? That's what we're going to dig into.
I mean, seriously, look at the numbers. About 80% of it is covered in a giant sheet of ice. So why call it Greenland? It's a great question, and the answer is this amazing story that's part exploration, part survival, and honestly, part really clever marketing. To get to the bottom of it, we need to go way, way back, even before the first Europeans showed up.
And here you go. Just look at this view from space. This picture says it all, doesn't it? That huge white expanse, that's the ice sheet. It's just immense. It covers pretty much the entire island. It's beautiful for sure, but it is overwhelmingly white, not green. This is the Greenland that's been around for thousands of years, a landscape totally dominated by ice.
Okay, so before we jump into the story of the name itself, it's really important to get this. Greenland's history didn't kick off with a bunch of Europeans. Not even close. Its story is way, way older, and it starts with the people who figured out how to survive in one of the toughest places on Earth. I mean, just look at this timeline. The depth of history here is just staggering. We're talking 4,500 years ago, long before any Viking ships were even on the horizon. You had these waves of Paleo-Inuit cultures making their way to Greenland. You had the Sakakak, then the Dorset, and eventually the Thule people, who are the direct ancestors of today's Inuit Greenlanders. These were groups that didn't just survive here, they thrived.
And get this, they came from what we now call Canada, traveling across the high Arctic. This wasn't just a simple move. Think about it. It was this epic feat of human resilience, just pure endurance. They were moving across sea ice, hunting seals, walruses, whales. Just incredible.
All right, now we get to the part of the story you've probably heard of, the chapter that gave the island its famous name, and also left us with one of history's biggest mysteries, the arrival and the complete disappearance of the Norse. So the whole story of the name really starts with this guy, Eric the Red. And he wasn't just some curious explorer. He was actually an outlaw. He got himself banished from Iceland for killing a couple of guys. So, needing a new home, he sailed west and stumbled upon this massive island.
And here we have it, the origin of the name. It's basically one of the greatest marketing ploys of all time. Seriously, Eric the Red was smart. He knew he couldn't start a new colony all by himself. He needed to convince people to come with him. So what do? You give this massive land of ice a really catchy, appealing name. Greenland. Genius, right?
And you know what? It totally worked. His little marketing trick paid off. Norse settlers followed him, and they set up two main colonies, the bigger eastern settlement down south and the smaller western settlement. And for almost 500 years, they actually made a life there, farming, raising livestock, even trading back with Europe. It was a real functioning, if very remote, European outpost. But then, nothing. Silence. By the 1400s, the Norse settlements were just gone, completely abandoned. When ships from Europe finally came back centuries later, all they found were ruins. So the big question is, what happened? Where did thousands of people just vanish to? Well, there's no single easy answer, but historians have a few really solid theories. First, the climate started to get colder, a period we call the Little Ice Age, which probably made their European style of farming impossible. There's also evidence they clashed with the Thule, the Inuit people who were moving in. On top of that, their own farming methods might have ruined the soil, and they could have lost contact with Europe for trade and supplies. The most likely scenario? It was a perfect storm, a combination of all of these things hitting at once. So after the mystery of the vanishing Norse, Greenland's story doesn't end. It just enters a new phase. It eventually reconnects with Europe, and before long, it finds itself playing a surprisingly important role in global politics. You can really see that journey unfold on this timeline. After Denmark-Norway recolonized it back in the 1700s, it kind of stayed off the radar until World War II and the Cold War, when the US realized its strategic importance and built air bases there. But the really big story of the last century has been this steady march toward autonomy. First, it became a province of Denmark, then it got home rule, and finally, in 2009, self-rule, which means Greenland now manages most of its own affairs. And that brings us right up to the present day. Because now, Greenland's icy past is crashing head-on into our planet's much, much warmer future. And that collision is putting this remote island right at the center of the climate crisis and a whole new game of global politics. And if you want to understand why, you just need to know one number: 7.2 meters. That's about 23.5 feet. That is how much global sea levels would rise if Greenland's entire ice sheet were to melt. That single fact is why the fate of this island matters to every single one of us, no matter where we live.
But this melting ice, it's a real double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a massive global threat, but on the other, it's uncovering incredible economic potential. Suddenly, valuable resources like rare earth minerals, oil, and gas are within reach. New shipping routes through the Arctic are opening up, and you can bet the world's superpowers are paying very, very close attention.
So that leaves us with one final, kind of wild thought. The land that Eric the Red cynically named Greenland as a marketing trick, well, it might actually become greener in our lifetimes. But as its 4,500-year-old ice sheet vanishes, revealing both huge opportunities and terrifying dangers, the question isn't about its old name anymore. The real question is, what will Greenland become on a planet that's changing faster than ever?